a bottle in hand, roaming around on the streets, and I managed to get frostbite through the cold weathers and homelessness. As a result of that, having both legs amputated.
The last time I saw you, you had legs, and then you didn't have legs, and you had a smile on your face. And I said, why are you smiling? And you said, I'm so grateful it happened because I finally accepted I was an alcoholic. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's so incredibly powerful. Do you still feel that way about it?
Absolutely. I had to be broken to a place where my way, my ideas, and my thinking are not working. It was God's gift that I lost 2 legs, because it makes me who I am today. That was a higher power God moment where, 2 legs were taken away and I was sat in a wheelchair and saying, just shut up and listen. You're running. And I've been shifted into a different direction completely with purpose. Pain and suffering of the alcoholic is an alcoholic's or an addict's best friend, because it's the only thing sharp enough to slice through the pride and the ego of the alcoholic or addict. And I know that's absolutely true for me.
Pax is always somewhere. I go on Facebook and he's on another holiday. He's doing something else. He's a big Liverpool fan. He got Liverpool legs, I believe.
Well, I haven't got them on now at the moment, but I did have them.
Yeah,
you never walk alone. That's the key.
Wow.
Yeah.
Welcome to School of Rock Bottom with Oliver Mason. I'm an actor and a recovery coach who's been in recovery many years, and I know firsthand that rock bottom can be the greatest teacher and the springboard for a beautiful life. And as you know, I interview fellow creatives and all inspiring people that have hit rock bottom, survived and thrived. This is a podcast of hope and how to get out of the darkness into the light. And that's why I'm so delighted today, because I have got the perfect Pax in the studio.
Hey, hello.
Pax, I'm so grateful that you've come down today. Before we dive into it, I'm just going to very, very quickly introduce Pax. He sent me the shortest bio ever, and he just wants to be introduced as Pax. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Pax. Now, everyone in recovery is a hero to me. Honestly, it's like the bravest thing to put down drugs and alcohol and to get into recovery. But genuinely, Pax is one of my recovery heroes. I had to get him on today so that you could hear his story and, how he survived through his rock bottom and then the amazing transformation that happened ever since. It really is hugely inspiring. Pax, you know what the first question is going to be before we get into all the other stuff. If you could take us to your rock bottom to start with, and then we'll get into the hope and the joy and the recovery.
My rock bottom was me with a bottle in hand, roaming around on the streets of London, with no care in the world, and I managed to get frostbite through the cold weathers and homelessness. And as a result of that, having both legs amputated. And that was the destruction of my drinking. And it got me onto a journey heading towards my rock bottom, and where my entire life was turned upside down, and letting go of the alcohol, letting go of the solution, letting go of the only thing that I know that was always giving me ease and comfort, and shutting my head and, the way I felt. But the realization that it's the very thing that was actually killing me. And my mind convincing me that is the best option. And getting to a place where my hands actually went up and said, I'm done.
Wow. We've had a lot of different rock bottoms on this show, obviously, before. And a lot of people talk about an emotional or sometimes a spiritual rock bottom being even more painful than a physical one. But I think yours is such a stark message of what can happen with alcoholism and addiction. I often tell your story, with your permission, in rehabs when people ask me, at what point am I going to get acceptance around that it's alcoholism or addiction? And I often use a couple of friends as yardsticks, one being a friend of mine that never used to drink during the day. One afternoon, she fell asleep on the sofa and forgot to pick a child up. To her, that was absolutely rock bottom. But when I talk about yours and say I've got a friend who had to lose his legs in order to get that acceptance, their jaw drops, because there's something about a physical rock bottom that people understand quicker in early recovery than I think an emotional or spiritual one. I don't know if you remember this moment, Pax. It was maybe one of the most powerful moments of my recovery. that's very inspiring to me. You were quite early in your recovery, and you were in a wheelchair, and you didn't have your prosthetic legs on at all. And the last time I saw you had legs, and then you didn't have legs. And I asked you what happened, and you told me, as you just described then, and you had a smile on your face. And I said, why are you smiling? And you said, I'm so grateful it happened because I finally accepted I was an alcoholic. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's so incredibly powerful. Do you still feel that way about it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My journey's been on a base of smashing the delusions that I've created for myself in ideas of what life's really about, chasing everything, whether it was work, money, cars, houses, women, it didn't matter what it was. Success was always from an external aspect. But then I found myself in a place where I had everything stripped away from me. But it's broke that delusion within me, the belief that I had. And it's very hard to describe it. It was, in that moment, I'm going the wrong direction. And it comes from within me. And it went beyond intellect. It went beyond the ego. And I just knew.
Wow. I mean,
it's hard to describe that.
I mean, we go back a lot of years, don't we? Sort of before and after recovery and in between. I know, like my story, relapse is part of your story as well. And my very early memories of you were always a lovely guy and very down to earth, but you were a bit more materialistic, I think, back then. Than you are now. I just wondered how, because you seem like a guy that had a lot materially. How did you end up homeless? Because that's quite a trajectory.
Pride.
Wow.
Ego. The thing is that I have this idea within me at that point was that I don't need nobody. I'm self-sufficient. I can do everything on my own. But with the destruction of alcoholism and the chaos and carnage that's created, the ripple effects that actually occur, is that nobody wants to be around an active alcoholic or an addict. The emotional pain that people suffer, especially the people who dearly love you, family, the very closest and dearest, they get affected more. And, when, there's certain family members said, that's it, enough is enough. My pride comes in and say, well, I don't need no one's help and I'm going to do whatever it is. But also mixed with that was my mind saying, I want to die. I don't want to be living in this world. There's a massive clash between the two. So the battle was right in my head. I've got one side of my pride does not want to receive help. I don't care. I've got the best solution, which is a bowl. Because it does what it does. And it's always done what it did. Was to give me that ease and comfort. It kind of gives us that kind of inner calmness. It quiets the mind. And I like to kind of describe the drink in a slightly different way, which is when I first drank it, it was a misguided spiritual experience. And I say that is because it started to do something for me, but it changed the way I was feeling. And I didn't realize in that moment that the reliance on that substance and the lengths it's going to go, up until a point where I'm not going to let it go, because to me, it was the only God that I knew. It's the only spiritual, how do I, get myself to a place where I'm calm? And the drink always did it. But the consequences of that is that it's also killing me.
Is that what your relapses were about? Trying to get it to work again the way it once did? I only ask that because I think there'll be a lot of people listening and watching to this that maybe are going through relapse, who are kind of potentially on the internet or on Spotify or Apple. They're trying to find content to try and make sense of what the heck is going on with them. Because relapse was a massive part of my story as well. Some people call relapse part of recovery, and I have a problem with that. I think relapse is part of addiction, but definitely it's part of my story. Don't know what you think. What part has relapse played for you?
You know, I would say from my own experience and my own journey, there are two different types of relapses. And I'm going to say this is one when I first came into recovery, and, you know, I'm constantly relapsing. And then coming into recovery, having the solution and having a number of years of sobriety behind. So knowing the solution and then relapsing.
Sure.
You know, and, you know, when I didn't have the solution, I can expect relapse because I'm not applying a solution to the problem that I've got. But then once I've applied the solution into my life and then life gets busy, other things start becoming more important than my recovery. Well, the way I look at that is as a self-imposed crisis. Is because I've allowed myself, you know, to drift away from the recovery program of, you know, what's actually saving my life, what's keeping me sober.
Yeah.
And very slowly and very subtly move into the directions of other fixes, other delusions, other beliefs of saying, you know, I confuse what happiness and where joy really comes from. You know, I still had this belief within me that it comes from, you know, the more success you have, the more, you know, the more money you have, the more houses you have, the more cars you have, you know. So my focus was actually, you know, that's what life's about, is achieve, okay, take and, you know, have all the external things.
Yeah.
But I get to understand that now, if I look at that, they're all delusions.
It's interesting you say the word delusion rather than denial, because I know this is something that you're quite passionate about, right? Because there's a couple of things there in what you said. One was, you know, once I had the solution, that's one different type of relapse. And then lots of little ones were happening because I didn't have a solution. Did it take all of those sort of little relapses, if you like? Well, I use the word little loosely. Some of these little ones can be, you know, life-threatening. Do you think you had to experience all those multiple relapses prior to getting the solution in order to find the energy and the purpose to get you to that solution? Does that make sense? Do you feel like you needed those in order to search it out?
Absolutely.
Right.
I needed every relapse. I needed every situation to occur to be where I am right here, right now, speaking to you. And, you know, as my journey's been going through my entire life, from a young kid, I've had my own mind, which is creating the ideas of what life's really about and navigating through. And I can go into, you know, as a young child, you know, if somebody said to me, go left, I'll be going right. You know, I'm just one of those guys where my mind is saying, well, you know, I'm a bit of defiance, going, no, I want to do things my way.
So it's not, that's why it's not denial then, right? So, you know, those relapses weren't happening because you were necessarily thinking, well, I don't have an alcohol problem. You'd actually attribute this, it sounds like, more to a delusion around it.
Right. It's a belief that I have that I'm okay.
Right.
Yeah. There is absolutely nothing wrong, you know, or the belief that I have that, and one of the biggest delusions that I had is how powerful my ego was. And when I say ego, I'm talking about intellect. Okay. Because I used my intellect to navigate through life, and it got me through tricky situations. It got me to succeed in business. It got me to actually have a lifestyle which I thought was glamorous. And I really believed that that was my greatest asset. That's a gift that I've got, that I'm pretty, you know, smart, whether you can call it street smart or, you know, I know how to navigate through life. But to come to the acceptance that was the very thing that's killing me, that was hard to accept. You know, but I had to go through those broken moments for me to actually understand the actual insanity that was actually occurring.
Was the hardest lesson the physical rock bottom? I mean, do you think if that hadn't have happened with the frostbite and losing your legs, do you think you would have carried on drinking longer?
I'm not too sure. Where I am with it today is that I know it needed to happen, because I was like a headless chicken running around on the chase. You know, whether it was work, whether it was you know trying to entertain people, with it was just go, and I firmly believe is that was a higher power God moment where 2 legs were taken away and I was sat in a wheelchair and saying, just shut up and listen, you're running. And I kind of see those paradoxes even in recovery now, is that I had to slow down. And actually I get a lot more done nowadays if I slow down more. It's just mad, but it's true.
Listen, Pax is always somewhere. I go on Facebook and he's on another holiday. He's doing something else. He's a big Liverpool fan. He got Liverpool legs, I believe. I don't know if you've changed them recently.
Yeah, well, I haven't got them on now at the moment, but I did have them.
Yeah,
you never walk alone. That's the key.
Wow.
Yeah.
I tell you what, my Liverpool fan friends are going to love this. I've got some that I know definitely are Liverpool fans who listen to this. That's going to be great. And then the metaphor, you never walk alone, quite literally for you now. Something that I know that you're quite big on is this idea of ego death. I mean, you've talked about this, up until now. We're kind of peppered some of the conversations. For you, sort of getting rid of your ego, has that kind of been a big conduit to being able to really fully connect with your recovery? You said a lovely analogy off air just a minute ago when we were having a coffee about leaves on a tree.
Just imagine a beautiful tree. It's got all the beautiful leaves in different shades, different colors. And it actually, you stand back from it and you're looking at it and it looks such a beautiful tree. It's all the leaves are attached. All the leaves are exactly where they need to be, right to the top. And they're all attached to the tree, the branches, to the trunk. We get closer and you see that each individual leaves are different. Some are small, some are large. Some are slim, some are tall, and some are different shades, darker greens, brownish, whichever. All of it actually makes up the tree, and it makes it beautiful with every little piece exactly the way it needs to be. Now let's get the human ego and give each leaf a human ego, and let's see what happens. It's like you can imagine that the leaves at the bottom are suddenly speaking and saying, why have I got the shitty view? I want to be at the top. They've got the better view, so it's like, I'm trying to be better than the other leaf. One's looking at the next leaf and saying, oh, that one's slim, why am I different? So comparing oneself to the other leaf next to it. But each leaf has been specifically placed in the specific order for it to be the tree.
Wow.
And so when I use that as a metaphor, it kind of brings life to it, and now it brings my journey into it. Whereas when I was a child, I didn't want to be who I was. I wanted to be what you were. Oh, I like what you've got, and I want to try and be you. So my mind's creating this idea that I'm not worthy.
Yeah.
I'm not good enough as I am.
This episode is sponsored by Gavin Sisters, the passionate teetotal founders of the Detox Balm Retreat and the creators of Funky Coffee. If you love the taste of coffee but want to ditch the crash, Funky Coffee is your new go-to. Made from triple certified organic Arabica coffee and infused with powerful mushrooms, it gives you all the energy and none of the jitters. Plus, it's amazing for your gut, skin, and athletic performance. And if you're looking to recharge your body and mind, you've got to check out the Detox Barn. This award-winning retreat located in both the UK and the Algarve is a plant-based, alcohol-free sanctuary where you'll learn how to be healthier, happier, and more balanced. Whether it's for a weekend away or a full restorative retreat, just visit gavinsisters.co.uk and use the code School of Rock Bottom for 10% off your next retreat or a bag of their amazing Funky Coffee. That's School of Rock Bottom for a 10% discount for a healthier, happier you. Go check them out. I think addiction is a lot about kind of separation, isn't it? Right. And about comparing yourselves to others. And then recovery shows up. and it says, no, we need to come together in order to find a solution. You mentioned the word solution earlier. I think people might be curious to know what you mean by that. What for you personally have you found as a solution to being driven by ego and picking the bottle up? Because I mean, you've not had a drink in over 8 years. Am I right in thinking that?
That's right. Yeah, over 8 years I've not drank, been completely sober.
Wow,
that includes medication.
That's amazing.
Especially with everything that I've gone through. So yeah, the solution's always been, me coming into recovery and applying a 12-step program. But the solution is always spiritual.
Okay.
I'm a very keen, intellectually minded person. So my ego wants to work everything out on an intellectual level, dismissing the spiritual aspect of it.
Right.
But the answer's always been in spiritual, and by going through the process of recovery, actually tapping into the spiritual realm within myself, I love, it's like every human being has a spiritual aspect. Metaphysics confirms it. We wouldn't be able to feel love, show empathy, compassion. We wouldn't be able to do any of those things without that aspect of it.
Yeah.
So we all have it. It's just that, all the stuff that was going on in my head was just blocking me from actually accepting who I am for who I am. Tapping into an inner resource, which, and I would say inner resource, but also an outer resource. It's the whole package. But coming into recovery and then actually looking at clearing what's going on with me, resentments, all the stuff that was blocked within me. I heard a beautiful man, and he said that if I want to describe my entire life and what information I hold within my mind of who I am, they're basically resentments. I'm re-feeling stuff or rethinking stuff of what I've convinced myself to be. Whether it's like I could say, oh, well, I'm not good enough. And it's that word of resentment and what it actually means. And
it literally means to re-feel, doesn't it?
Right.
So
it's that kind of thing. So I'm re-feeling every aspect of my, whether it's the past or I've got a mind that constantly goes into the future and it's not even happened, but I'm re-feeling something that might happen. And I'm creating this idea of who I am within that.
So your past story is following you into the present and causing turmoil. So therefore you need a drink or a drug or whatever to fix that solution.
Right.
It sounds to me an amazing bit of work that you've gone on, and it's one that I've been on too. And I think for myself, a lot of that has been about finding a way to accept the past, forgive the past, see my part in it. Has these things played a part for you as well in terms of getting over those resentments?
Oh, 100%. It's amazing how my mind functions and, kind of sees all the negative, all the bad stuff other people have done, but it completely ignores what I'm doing. And my own mind's doing this. It's just consistently rationalizing, justifying, minimalizing, and, kind of making what others have done more, way more worse than actually, and it's a cover-up story of what's been really going on.
Is that what was really fueling your alcoholism back in the day then? Those resentments? Were you drinking on that mostly, do you think?
I would look at it more of being completely self-obsessed.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And resentment come into it because that's part of the self-obsession. It's what others have done to me in that selfish, self-centered place. The harms that others have done, but also covering up the harms that I've done. You know, I'm a firm believer. I don't, I know in recovery, we come in and say, yeah, we're at, we have low self-esteem. But I also I've got to look at it from a place where I am the creator of my own low self-esteem. You know, so the moment I've done a harm to somebody else, I've created that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I've done some harm. Subconsciously, it's there. You know, or I've done something dishonest, and I've created a fear to go with that. Someone's going to catch me out. Someone's going to find out about, you know, I'm trying to blag my way through something. So all of those things were kind of me just doing stuff through life, believing, that this is the right way of dealing with it all. And trying to use intellect to kind of brush things to the side or cover it up. Or the greatest one is, well, I've forgotten about it, but it's not forgotten. You know, but my mind is very, very tricky. Well, the way my mind works is that, you know, I know for a fact in this moment, I know I've got to work on, I would say 4. It could be more. Rationalization, it's lies. I'm lying to myself. Minimalize, it's lies. I'm lying to myself. Intellectualize, it's lies. I'm lying to myself. And analyze. Well, my mind wants to analyze every situation, you know, and I will need to figure out the solution to this and that. And I spent a lot of time doing this. And, you know, before recovery, I spent, 2 years in and out of treatment, analyzing, figuring it out, thinking that belief that I know I've got this, I can work this out and I'll find a solution to it. All of that kind of stuff is nonsense. And
how do you let go of that? I mean, I assume, and I know that some of that is about retrospective work, you know, with a therapist potentially in my case, or like you say, a 12-step program as well, something else that I engage with. It sounds like you're kind of putting faith in something or letting go of something or handing over something. Is that what's happening to get rid of those 4 things you just described? Because those 4 things are very noisy.
Do you know something? I mean, I struggle with it. Right. It's amazing. I mean, I live with the mind. It's you know, we all have it. We need it to function. It's just that my mind is on a higher volume, and I need that awareness. This is where the brokenness really does come into it, where I had to be broken to a place where my way, my ideas, and my thinking are not working. And it's that surrender that really comes in, where I know I can't do this on my own.
It's really interesting. There was a study out recently that proved on one level in one study that what doesn't kill you actually doesn't make you stronger. And I got into a little debate with a doctor on TikTok about this, just a few little comments. And I said, okay, even though the kind of neuroscience around that, there might be some suggestions that that's true, when it comes to addiction, we often need to be taken to a place where we've nearly been killed in order to access the tools that will make us stronger. And at that point, she conceded and went, yes, that is correct. I think you'd be somebody very good to ask this, you know, why is rock bottom the greatest teacher? You know, why is it that you had to be broken in order to get to this place? Why is that for you?
I need to bring in my own spiritual advice, my guide, right, which is my sponsor, which I use. And his words are, pain and suffering of the alcoholic is an alcoholic's or an addict's best friend. Because it's the only thing sharp enough to slice through the pride and the ego of the alcoholic or addict. And I know that's absolutely true for me. You know, and we were talking about pride earlier. Pride is massive. You know, I mean, forget character defects. Pride, it was a driving force in my entire life. But I needed it slicing, you know, and it was the very thing that the actual pain and suffering was there for me to actually say, whoa, and change course.
Wow.
Change directions. So I needed it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you. We're having this conversation.
You know what's quite beautiful about your story and the way that you are today and how you describe it is there's so much personal autonomy, such ownership of your story. And of course, a very positive way of looking at it. That's just incredible, particularly with what's happened. You know, there's no victim mentality. There's no kind of, it was their fault or their fault. I mean, I know you've been there in the past with it. It's very much like taking ownership of your story, which is very much where I'm at as well. I find it really, really fascinating. How were you able to get rid of that mindset? Because I would have imagined that there would have been quite a bit of self-pity post losing your legs initially. How have you got to a place where you no longer look back on the past or regret it?
It's all been through my spiritual development.
Right.
Okay. And, you know, once I realized that needed to happen to see to slow me down, it needed to happen for me to change course. Acceptance comes straight through.
Yeah.
After that. Because I know, and I sent a little reading to you about gracefully broken.
Yeah.
And I do believe that, you know, I'm very, very blessed to be alive. I'm very, very blessed to be sitting in front of you and, you know, speaking on this format to carry a message, you know, whatever it is. And if somebody gets something from it, then it's beautiful. And when I say gracefully broken, is that I've spent a lifetime creating barriers and personas all around me, you know, and what I believe, what life's about, you know, as we were talking about it, success, whichever it is. And coming into recovery, it's like I had to smash all those barriers down to be left bare. And when I was left bare, I do believe that where I am now and as the journey's been going through is that I've been rebuilt to be me.
Wow.
And only me.
It really sounds like if you could turn back the clock that you wouldn't change anything.
Absolutely not.
It's really powerful, that.
You know, I know that it was God's gift that I lost 2 legs because it makes me who I am today. It brings me to that place where I, you know, was speaking about work and other things. You know, I was going in one direction about work. There's no purpose in it. And I've been shifted into a different direction completely with purpose. You know, going to a you know, where when I'm doing something, there is meaning behind it. And I'm actually being me. You know, I spent a lot of time trying to be someone that I wasn't.
Yeah.
My mind consistently was convincing me that, okay, I need to be like others. You know, just like that we were using that tree kind of thing. Comparing myself, each leaf comparing, but forgetting that actually I am unique. Just like one individual leaf on that tree, unique to do whatever I need to do.
Yeah.
You know?
You most certainly are. And you're incredibly connected to your recovery. I mean, you work incredibly, incredibly hard. I mean, every day on WhatsApp, I get a message from Pac, some kind of recovery quote or whatever, you know, and I know you're always giving back and helping others all the time. You know, it's a constant energy and passion of yours. And I highly applaud you for that. It's absolutely fantastic. You've also got a lovely gift as well. And I think this has come with a bit of time in recovery as well, where you can be incredibly passionate and loving, but at the same time, give a bit of a dose of realism, and you can be quite tough as well. So just before we came into the studio, I was asking you a little bit about cravings and triggers, because, you know, there's going to be some people listening to this that might be quite early recovery, and they might be listening to this and kind of going, right, I want to find out a little bit more about denial and maybe some solutions and what I can do. Triggers and cravings is something that is constantly talked about, particularly people in early recovery from drugs and alcohol. What's your take, first of all, on triggers in general?
You know, when I was early in recovery,
Yeah.
I found myself in this place. Oh, I need to protect myself from my triggers. I look back at it, you know, I was the trigger. You know, and it didn't matter what was going on around me. You know, it's my reaction to what was going around me. I spent a lot of time trying to, you know, blame and point fingers and say, London's a problem. So I have to get away from London. So I can convince myself that's my trigger. But absolutely, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I'm pointing one finger at something and 3 fingers pointing straight back at me. You know, I thought, oh, business is the problem. I'm pointing fingers. You know, it's the stresses and, you know, I can't handle it. I'm pointing a finger, but it's 3 fingers pointing straight back at me. You know, the girlfriend was a problem. I'm pointing fingers. It's 3 fingers pointing straight back at me. You know, the family's a problem. I'm pointing fingers. It's 3 fingers pointing straight back at me. And it's more to do with my reaction to everything, you know. And the thing is that all of these things could be a problem. But the insanity that I pick up and drink or use on the base of something outside of me occurring is insane. I mean, it's like saying, you know, I'll go back to the literature, and it says that we're like men who've got a headache. And to relieve the pain of the headache, we pick up a hammer and start whacking ourselves around the head with it, you know? So for me to drink is like I'm torturing myself. So, you know, someone does something and I believe that it's a good idea to go and pick up a drink and torture myself for somebody else's. So the actual action is insane itself. Yeah. And then getting to a point where there's something wrong with me, you know, and coming into the journey of recovery is that, you know, I guess it's that I'm the one who's playing Russian roulette, and I'm the one who's picking the drink up. I'm the one who's, you know, pouring it down my throat. Up until today, I've never seen, it has never happened that a drink has jumped off the table and landed in my mouth. Yeah. You know, it needs me to pick it up.
Well, there's certain things you have to do early on, sort of quite basic things. I'm assuming there was maybe no alcohol in your house.
Of course.
You were staying away from wet places, things like that. Did you avoid sort of work parties and things like that early on? I'm particularly talking about maybe the first 3 months to a year.
Of course. You know, I had to stay away from, you know, those kind of areas where I was protecting my sobriety. And it's more about protecting my sobriety and knowing that if I pick up, I'm just going to hurt myself. I'm going to kill myself, going towards killing myself. So the initial aspects, and this is where recovery really does come in. So, you know, we get to recovery meetings or we hang around with people who are in recovery because we're less likely to be, you know, encouraged or go to a place where we just suddenly go and pick up. And we're off with the races with it. You know, so it was essential. You know, I know where I was placed on a wheelchair. And I knew that I had to be in recovery. So even putting structure in my life, that I surrounded myself and getting to meetings, you know, and splitting the whole entire day up was necessary for me to start building on something so where I can kind of move forward. And that's where the program really does come in.
And what's it like for you now? Can you be around alcohol? I mean, I know you're not going to go and sort of seek it out purposefully, but like, could you be in a pub, for example? Could you be around that now?
Absolutely. The thought of me picking up a drink doesn't even cross my mind.
Sure.
But I'm under no illusion.
Yeah.
That, you know, that there will be a chance where I will pick that drink up again at some point.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a mind that will convince me because the pain and suffering is not there. That, you know, I'm so far from actually a drink or, you know, it's that kind of thing where my mind convinces me I'm so far from it. And yet it always goes back down to where I am internally, you know, and if I'm tapping into the internal resource, which is a power great myself, you know, I call it God. And how I'm actually working on my spiritual development. That's the key for me. And how I'm working with the principles of the program into my life. Yeah. And how am I growing? How am I looking at myself? And seeing that, you know, I'm making mistakes. Yeah. The thing is that I'm a human being. I will make mistakes. Yeah. I'm under no, you know, I spent a lifetime trying to be perfect, control every aspect of everything. I make mistakes all the time.
I just want to talk about cravings briefly.
Yeah.
Because I can understand people in early recovery, particularly when they're kind of getting over the kind of physical withdrawal of alcohol and certain drugs as well, that a craving could actually be quite neurological, and it could be something physical. But, you know, after a period of time in recovery, to me, I would turn around to someone, particularly if they're, you know, quite a few months in, I'm having a craving. I'd say, well, actually, you're talking out your backside, because if you actually want a craving, go and have a drink. You know, if you think you're craving now, have a drink, and boy, will you have one afterwards. You know, the literature calls it the phenomenon of craving, doesn't it? Do you feel as harsh about this word craving? It really kind of gets my back up, particularly when I hear people who've been in recovery a while talk about cravings, because I just feel like it's one of these words that we use as an excuse to pick up, because you know, right now, I honestly have zero craving for alcohol. But I know if I went to the pub now and had one, I'd have a huge craving for the second one. Yep. So this idea of craving, once you're a few months into your recovery, I'll be a little bit more lenient with people early on. Do you have a similar kind of reaction to that word?
You know, there's so many misconceptions of what a craving is, and understandings. And I mean, I remember, you know, I used to go to meetings and say, well, you know what, I'm craving a drink, right? But not understanding that's the obsession.
Okay.
There's a difference, you know? Craving really occurs, and I believe this is in the scientific and the way biologically how it occurs is I need a drink to be going into me, or a food, beverage or something, and then I'll set that phenomenon of craving that you've described, where the body physically demands more of the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's the physical aspect. If I'm not drinking or not using, it's the obsession. And sometimes, you know, the obsession does not need to be on the drink or a substance. I found from my own experience is the unbearable aspect is actually obsessing of my shame, guilt, remorse, actions of past, resentments, all that is fueling and it giving me the idea that I'm having a craving about a drink.
Yeah. Because
my mind's gonna go to a place of solution. How do I fix this? And the only thing that I know that's worked in the past is pick up a drink.
Yeah.
You know, because I get that ease and comfort. But once I put it down, I'm left with myself. It's that kind of thing, is a restless, irritable discontent.
Sure.
You know, and I think a lot of people also miss out the bedevilments, because there are the expansion of restless, irritable discontent. And I usually, when I'm speaking to somebody, is I say, let's go to the dictionary and see what restless is, what irritable is, and what discontent is, and see the similars and expand it. And it actually brings up a huge, even though there's 3 words, they're actually mean a hell of a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the bedevilments, which are massive. You know, we're having trouble with personal relationships. You know, we're a prey to misery and depression. We're full of fear.
Yeah,
we have this sense of feeling that we're uselessness. You know, all of those put together.
Yeah,
it's what it was driving me. I go, I need to fix. I need to change the way what all this stuff is going on.
And have you found in recovery that can come back even though you're not drinking? Because I know for me, I don't experience it much, but it does come back in, and that's where, you know, food can come in, or work is a big one for me. I'm just going to work really, really, really hard to get rid of this uncomfortable feeling. Is that something that you notice sort of slides back in on a semi-regular basis?
100%. And this is where my journey, you know, look, I've got 2 parts of my journey. There was one part when I came in with legs.
Yeah.
And I found myself in that place where I've got a bit of sobriety behind me. Everything's great. You know, I'm no way of thinking about a drink, you know, and then the work came in, you know, the successes and the chase for the money. Then it was the girlfriend, the family relations that I kind of rebuilt together. So all those things became more important than my recovery. Without even realizing those were just fixes of what was not right on the inside. Yeah. It was very subtle. And then becoming reliant on that kind of stuff, it's just another ego fix, as far as I'm concerned. So my mind convinces me that this is what I've got to do. Or shopping. I need a new wardrobe.
Yeah.
Or, you know, it didn't matter. And then coming into recovery and then realizing that I always say this, is that when I come into recovery, if I'm not enlarging my spiritual life, I'm going backwards. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was enlarging my materialistic life in my first recovery. Everything's still external. And this time round, it's been internal and spiritual. Spiritual growth means make mistakes, grow. Self-sacrifice must help others, grow. Self-sacrifice is a massive word.
So in a way, you've been growing inward.
Right.
I had someone on the podcast talking about this the other week, growing inward. There's a lovely Jung quote, and I'm going to get it wrong, that in order for a tree to grow to heaven, it's got to have its roots in hell, which I think is quite a powerful statement as well. Something you said earlier, I just want to touch on real briefly, and then unfortunately we're running out of time, and I've got one more question and I have to get in before the clock comes out. Is this physiological thing that you're talking about, that once a drink is in your body, it's almost like a physical craving? I'll never forget my mum coming round midweek years ago when I was just a weekend drinker with a bottle of wine, and I actually told my mum off. I said, look, I don't drink during the week, you're going to set me off. And she looked really, really confused, and I had no craving for any wine at all, and we both had a glass of wine. She said, oh, that really quenched my thirst. And then she took the cork and put it back in the fridge, and I said, well, it's actually now made me thirsty. I find that really, really fascinating, that we could have exactly the same glass of liquid and have a completely different reaction. And I always used to feel like, even on a sort of hot, sunny afternoon, like if I had a pint and then it sort of stopped, I'd almost get a hangover like straight away. I'd feel really uneasy and uncomfortable. And of course, the next thing I'd have to do is have that second drink. I find it really fascinating. I think there is something inbuilt with people like us, something much deeper and physiological that happens. That doesn't seem to happen to the, for want of a better phrase, and if you're listening to this, I'm doing inverted commas, normal drinker.
Yeah. Well, it's been proven.
Sure.
Biologically, for myself as an alcoholic, it's, my body will react to alcohol differently than others.
That's right.
Just like any other allergies, an abnormal reaction. People who drink alcohol, they can take it or leave it. Mine is just like, I want more.
Yeah.
I want more, Yeah. And it's a physical aspect of it. It's what makes alcoholism, on the physical aspect, and then you got the mental aspect. Absolutely. We can't do nothing about the physical aspect of it. Yeah. The only thing is, don't drink.
Yeah.
And we were talking about is the main problem starts when we're not drinking.
That's probably another whole other podcast there.
It is.
I just want to finish on this, Pax. I'm just aware of time. I'm imagining someone listening to this who's in rock bottom at the moment, quite desperate. When I sort of think of you in that hospital room, being given the news that, if we don't take your legs away from you, that you're going to die, that it's going to spread to the rest of the body, I'm sort of taken in my imagination to a very visceral rock bottom, a very emotional one. Obviously, I don't know how it was for you. I could only imagine. But you're someone that I could hugely know has been there, sort of to those rock bottom depths. To someone specifically in that real turmoil, what would you say to them if they're listening to this now about what could happen next?
Well, if the person embarks on a journey of recovery, everything opens up. Everything can change. The other is that it's death. That's the bottom line. I've had experiences of people I've been trying to help, and I found them dead on their couch. It's life. It's sad. But it's where the illness actually takes people. It's not one, it's been two. And it's that delusion, the individual believing that they're okay. And if they're in that place where they're at the fork, then hope. Hear something I've say, or somebody else is saying something, that something can work and something can change. And I like to use a metaphor, where just imagine yourself, you're at a ravine and you must get to the other side of a ravine. It's life and death. And there's a wooden bridge that goes across it. And there's broken slats of timber on that bridge. And you're so full of fear. You don't know which step you're going to take, and you're going to fall in a ravine and die. And when I started this journey of recovery, I was full of fear. How do I cope? What am I going to do? How am I going to function? How am I going to interact with people? My world was turned completely upside down. And then somebody comes from behind and takes all the steps necessary and gets to the other side and then shouts back to you and says, take the steps I've taken. You get given a choice. You either choose your own, or you go with hope that if you do likewise as others have done in recovery, that you can also get to the other side. And that's exactly what we do. Because we've been in the depths of pain and suffering. And we've placed us, by help of others, we've placed ourselves onto the other side, ready to put our hand out and saying, we're here.
Wow. What an amazing way to finish. What powerful words, And anyone listening or watching this, you can believe Pax, he's been there and he's come out the other side, and you know it well. Huge thanks for today, Pax. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I hope Liverpool carry on this good run. I hope Arsenal just pip you at the end. But other than that, I hope you go on a good run.
They say something, don't they? They say, keep coming back.
Yeah, that's right. That's Arsenal right now. They keep coming back and not winning it. But it's been absolutely brilliant. Huge thanks again to you, Pax.
Yeah, thank you.
For everyone watching or listening to this, please go to the show notes now and you can find out how to connect with Pax online if he so feels he wants to put his details there. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit subscribe. Also, leave a comment. That really helps the algorithm. If you're on Spotify, hit follow, give us 5 stars. Same on Apple. Share this with anyone that you think needs to hear or watch this. And as I've always promised, and I've not let you down yet, and I also, just before I sign off, I just want to give a shout out to my friend Matthew Jones, who has an amazing podcast called Life After Jazz Hands, where he interviews creatives who left drama school 20 years ago. He keeps bigging me up on his podcast, so I must do the same. And I'll put a link to his podcast at the bottom. It's called Life After Jazz Hands. Head there. It's on all the platforms. And anyway, as I was saying, I've not let you down yet. I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Until then, look after yourself, and thanks for watching or listening.